Then you have wrath. It's wrath or bondage. Okay, let's look at bondage. Bondage. And third is wrath. And fourth is enmity. Right, three categories of issues that human being faced in our sin. When we say we are sinful, yes, we are guilty. We are under the bondage of certain things. God's wrath is against us, and we are the enemies of God. We are alienated from God. What happened on the cross? Right? Guilt is met with expiation, right? Expiation means removal, right? Removal, sacrificial expiation. Guilt is removed. You are no longer guilty in God's court. Bondage is met with redemption, right? Or ransom. Jesus' death was a ransom to redeem you from the bondage of, remember, at least three things have said. Then wrath. Because we are sinners, God's wrath is kindled against us. And wrath is met with propitiation. Propitiation. Right? On the cross, God's wrath is placated. Right? God's wrath is satisfied, calmed down. Fourth is enmity. Enmity. We are God's enemies. We are God's enemies. On the cross, what happened? Reconciliation. Jesus Christ died so that we can be brought back, reconciled. So enmity or alienation. So these are the four categories of atonement that we see. So you can look at the death of Christ with this, standing in the four corner, like guilt, bondage, wrath, and enmity. And all these things come together on the cross, right? The atonement. So that is what we have seen. Today, we need to look at efficacy of the atonement. Efficacy of the atonement. All right. What gives efficacy to the blood of Christ so that it can satisfy God's holy demands in the areas of guilt, bondage, wrath, and enmity? All right. What gives this efficacy? In other words, what unifies and gives cohesion to the atonement? What gives cohesion, right? That, coherence, logical cohesion, what it gives? The answer would be obedience. The obedience of Christ is what enables his blood to cleanse from all sin. Okay? So, if you look at atonement in a nutshell, it was the obedience. God reckons Christ's obedience to our accounts of disobedience. We are sinners means we are disobedient to God's law, God's command, and Christ obeyed for us, right? So we are looking at two types of obedience when we study about the death of Christ. What are those two obedience? Number one is known as passive obedience, right? Passive obedience. What does that mean? This is the name given by the theologians for Christ's obedience in yielding up his life in death as a satisfaction for sin. Yeah, he gave himself up on the cross. He yielded up his life in death. He gave his life. So it is passive. He gave himself, right? It's something that happened to him. On the basis of this obedience, the penalties of the law incurred by the individual are paid by Christ, right? In God's judicial court, in God's judicial court, God's judgment is there. That judgment is that what? Wages of sin is death. Sin has to be paid by life, giving life, that is death. So Christ on the cross paid, right, the penalties that is incurred by the law. Okay, so what happened? When the penalties are paid, you are forgiven or pardoned. Punishment is done. Okay, where do you see the verse? Philippians chapter 2 verse 8. This is a famous one. He humbled himself. Remember emptying, when we looked at the idea of kenosis. What did Christ empty? We discussed that in the beginning of this doctrine. So in Philippians chapter 2, 8, we read he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death. Yes, even death was an obedience for Jesus. So that is called as the passive obedience, right? Paying the penalty. Paying the penalty. But then we talk about one thing more. This is something that usually most of the people don't talk about. Yeah, they don't talk about at all. So therefore, I think it is very important. What is that? On the cross, what happened? We know that Christ, he paid the penalties, right? Penalties. But pardon and forgiveness alone would not qualify anyone to go heaven. Yes. Mere release from punishment is insufficient. Think, on the cross, what happened? Jesus paid your debts. That's right. You're forgiven. True. But because you're forgiven, your forgiveness is not sufficient to go to heaven. Yes, one who has been released from the penalty of the law is not on the same plane as the one who has perfectly kept the law. That is the problem. In order to go to heaven, not only forgiveness is necessary, you need to have perfect obedience. Perfect obedience of the law. Who in the world perfectly obeyed everything in the law demands? Because you need this merit here. On the cross, one aspect is happened. What is that? Penalty is paid, you are forgiven. But because you are forgiven, forgiveness is not enough you to go to heaven. What else do you need? You need to obey the law. What do you need? You need righteousness. Yeah. Without righteousness, you cannot go to heaven. So, here's the statement. Righteousness is required to enter heaven and stand before God. What is needed? Not only forgiveness, but righteousness. Yeah, non-imputation of sin is insufficient. Imputation of merit also necessary. Yes? Yes, here we are. Mhm. We are sinner, right? Wages of sin is death. So Jesus Christ died on the cross, right? Jesus died on the cross. So dying on the cross means, okay, our sin, right? Penalty is paid on the cross. Penalty is paid. So we are now forgiven. We are forgiven. Yes. That means right now, we don't have punishment. We are not worthy to be punished now because Christ took our punishment. Yeah. We are punishment-less people. Who are we? Punishment-less people. But can you go to heaven because of you are not going to be punished? No. If you want to go to heaven, what do you need? Righteousness. Or you need merit. You need to earn righteousness. But can you? You cannot. You cannot earn righteousness. Righteousness is necessary, right? So what God did here, look at carefully. When we talk about imputation, right? We talk about imputation. Yes. Here is humanity. Here is Adam. Here is Jesus Christ. All right, this is just for example. Adam sinned, right? So these people, we are sinful by nature. So we have inherited, right? We have inherited sin. Inherited sin from whom? Our parents. Especially it comes from father. Right? We inherited sin. We have the nature. Everyone is equally sinful because of the nature. Number two, here is the first imputation. The sin of the first sin of Adam, plucking that tree, that fruit from the tree, imputed into our account. So we are sinful by nature, plus we have sin by imputation. We have what? Sin by imputation. Yes. Now, our sin, this imputed sin, right, that humanity has, now this is on the cross, the sin is imputed to Jesus, right? Second imputation. Sin is imputed to Jesus, put in his account, and Jesus is punished. Jesus is punished for the sin. Yeah. Or, or the sin of the world. Jesus is being punished here. All right. So that means now on our account, no more sin. We are forgiven. Right? We are forgiven. But there is a problem. Problem is, because we are forgiven, forgiveness is not sufficient to go to heaven. What else we need? We need righteousness. Right? We need righteousness. That is something that has to be earned, and there's no one. So what Christ did, that's what I say here. Look at here. What Christ did, on the basis of Christ's perfect obedience to his Father's will during his lifetime. Yes, from the birth till death. Right? Jesus obeyed. And what he did, he earned. What did he obey? He obeyed all the requirements of the law. All the requirements. He obeyed everything. There was not even one thing that he did not obey. He obeyed everything. Right? Remember, On the eighth day, he was circumcised. That's a requirement. Fine. You ask anything that Jesus did not do. So he earned righteousness. He earned righteousness, or he earned merits. He earned righteousness, or he earned merit by, so the merit of Christ's obedience. Now what happens? What happened? Coming back to the picture again, right? Jesus Christ is on the cross. He took our sin. Penalty is being paid. Now what Jesus did, the righteousness that he earned is imputed to us. Imputed to us, right? The righteousness of the law that Jesus obeyed in his life, that he earned, now he gives to his people. Now what happened? We have two things now. We have forgiveness and we have righteousness, right? Forgiveness and we have righteousness. Two things, which is what needed for us to go to heaven. All right? So this is what we read in Romans 5:19. Through the obedience of the one, that is Jesus Christ, many will be made righteous. Many will be righteous. So that is what active obedience. Friend? So what you saw here now, two kinds of obedience. What are those? Number one, passive obedience. What is passive obedience? It is the death on the cross. What is active obedience? It is obeying all the requirements of the law to earn righteousness for us. So when we now stand before God, we not only we are forgiven, but we have the righteousness of the law, which is required to be in his presence. All right? So that is very important. So Jesus, now there is a question sometimes people ask, okay, why did Jesus come? Jesus come to save us, right? That's what people say. So why not Jesus come to this world like 33-year-old man? Why he did not come as 33-year-old man? Why he had to come as a baby? Why? Why not 33-year-old man? All right? So the answer would be, Jesus has to be born because he has to earn righteousness. He has to fulfill all the requirements of the law like every human being. So he has to be born as a baby, right? Circumcised on the eighth day, right? Follow every requirements of the law. Do not break anything. No sin. Earn the merit. That is the reason he was born as a baby. All right. So I hope you understood the difference between active obedience and passive obedience of Jesus. Right. Because the reason why we discuss that now is because it's related to the death. So when we talk about Jesus Christ, his life and death are very important. It's not only death is important, his life also is very, very important. And if anyone says only death is important, then they have not understood biblical doctrine of salvation. That's a problem. Okay. Now we come to a crucial question. It's a big one. The extent of the atonement. Whom did Jesus die for? Okay, this is the biggest problems now. So I am going to explain that one. Okay, how much? Yes. Now listen carefully. The extent of atonement. The question whether Christ's atoning work was a general provision or a particular accomplishment. All right, so let's ask the question. Let's ask the question here. Whom did Christ die for? All right, whom did Christ die for? Let me get some answers. Christ died for whom? Can I get some answers?
He died for the elect.
I guess so. All right. Joseph wants to say he died for the elect, or wants to say he died for believers. Okay. Any other answers? Whom did Christ die for?
Like Matthew chapter 1, I think verse 21 says he died for his people.
Okay. I mean, yes. Any other answers?
He died for all people, all the people.
All right. All right. That's what I wanted to get. He died for all people. All right. That's another answer. So apparently there are two answers, right? Two answers here. This is the biggest thing that is going on, like in the theological world. For whom did Christ die? All right. So those who believe all people, they would say it is a universal atonement. Universal atonement. Those who believe that only elect, they will say it's a particular atonement. All right, particular atonement. And as we discuss, you will see where I go, right? So, so the question whether Christ's atoning work was general provision or a particular accomplishment has been matter of intense debate for centuries. Right? It has been intense debate for centuries, and good men differ on this issue. Yes. So, some of you believe in all people, some of you believe elect. Not that what is in debate is actually here is not whether all men will be saved, right? That's not a debate. Now, who's Prakash Sharma? You said all people. Jesus died for all people, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. But Prakash Sharma believe, I hope, that all will not be saved. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't think anyone believes that believers in universalism. Universal salvation. Universal salvation. All people one day, all people will be in heaven. No. Hell is there. Hell is there. People will go to hell. That means all will not be saved.
Right.
Is that sure?
Yes.
We can all agree, right? Yes. So that's not a debate at all. Not a debate at all. So that is not the issue. All Bible-believing Christians of necessity recognize that some people will not be saved and will suffer eternal damnation. In this sense, everyone who denies universalism recognize some sort of limitation on Christ's atonement. Get that? Right? Even though Christ died for all people will not be saved. That means everyone said there is some limit. Right? Everyone said there is some limit. All will not go to heaven. All will not go to hell also. So some will go to hell, some will go to heaven. So everyone believes that. So everyone believes that even though Christ died for we would say Christ died for all, it doesn't mean that everyone will go to heaven. So the real question at the issue is design of the atonement. What did God intend for it to accomplish? Right? What God's intention? There are three basic views, and then there are a vast number of variations for these basic views. We are not going to look at the variations, but we are looking at the basic view. All ostensibly held by people describing themselves as Calvinistic. That is what quite interesting. These three views are within the Calvinistic circle itself. All right. So what are those? Some hold that atonement is universal in intention, but provisional in character. What is that? It is universal in intention. Then atonement is intended as whole, but its character is provisional. What is that? Let's look at a little more. Atonement is perfect sacrifice with unlimited substitutionary potential that renders all men savable. What is that? Yes, by the death of Christ, God can save all men. God can save. He can, right? He can save all men, right? But the atonement is limited in its application by man's free will alone. God's eternal decree to elect is not truly limiting factor, since this decree is based on his advanced knowledge of the free acts of men. This view is consistent with the understanding of Arminianism, but is held by some who call themselves four-point Calvinist. All right, so Arminians, let's take first of all Arminians. Arminians believe that yes, God's atonement of Christ has the potential to save everyone, capacity to save everyone, but it cannot save everyone because man has got free will. Man has got free will. So when man exercises free will, some people rejected the atonement, so that it cannot be saved. So that is the same view among some Armenian, and even some of the four-point Calvinists have that problem, right? So that is the first group. Yeah, has the capacity to save everyone, but will not save everyone because why? Because human beings have got free will. They reject the atonement. That's the first group. Second group is some hold that atonement is undefined in intention. All right, undefined. It's not defined. Is it only for particular people, or is it only for or it is for whole world? It's not really. Atonement doesn't actually say at all whether it is for particular people or for all. It doesn't matter. If the first group say it is for all, second group say it is undefined at all, and both provisional and redemptive in its character. That means in its provision it is not defined, in its character, redemptive in its character is also not designed. In its design, atonement had unlimited redemptive potential, but God's subsequent elective decree in eternity past mitigated the potential of Christ's death, rendering its redemptive substitutionary only for the elect. So what is the second group says? Bible never say the intention. Intention is not at all a debate whether it's only for the elect or for the it's no. Yes, it is the power of the power of the atonement is that it can save everyone. But what happens because of the election? Because of the election brings a limit, right? Election brings a limit. All right, that means Of course, it has the capacity to save everyone. Because God elected, it will not save everyone. Right? There is no question of design. Whether God intended to save everyone, but some will be saved, or God only intended to save the elect. No, the intention question is not there. Right? Rather, election is important. Election limits. Right? Only for the elect. So in his kenotic state, however, Christ did not know the identity of the elect and self-consciously died in the same way for all, not knowing from whom his life and death were actually substituted, and for whom he was merely making lesser provisions. This view is known as Amyraldianism, right? Amyraldianism. That is a second view. Now let's go to the third view. What is that? Some hold atonement is particular in its intention, right? And redemptive in its character. The limitation of particularity of the atonement is established by God's prior decree to elect in eternity past. As a result, atonement is actually substitutionary in its eternal design and thus intended for the benefit of the elect alone. This view is that of the historic 5-point Calvinism. All right? So, what are we looking at here? 3, right? 3 views here. Right? The first view, atonement is designed for all people. Okay, let's write that one. Designed for all people. Designed for all people, but some people reject, so it is limited. Right? Designed for all people, but applied to only believers, right? Arminians believe, and Calvinists also, some Calvinists, 4-point Calvinists would also believe, yes, designed for all people, but applied only to the elect. Right? Some 4 points. So design is for all, or intention. Yes, intention for all. Design. Maybe they would say design, not intended. But most of the Armenians would say intended for all because of the free will they reject, therefore it is limited. Second group say, no, there is no design, no intention of, it is undefined. Undefined. Atonement is not like God has never intended to save all or intended to save elect. No, that's not the way atonement is provided. It is designed. That's not the way. It has the capacity to save everyone, but election makes it limited. If God elected some people to salvation, then it makes limited. So only elects are saved, right? Third group says it is designed only for the elect, only for the elect, and therefore only elect can be saved. So these are the 3 views. Any clarification needed for these 3 views? Any clarification? I hope you understood these 3 views about the extension. Now we need to look at a few things more here. All right. How much? Yeah, we have a lot of things, huh? Okay.